talk about geocaching today. Scott did a presentation for the library board, and I was very impressed. And it looked like it was a lot of fun. Scott's background, University of Chicago, yay. And he's currently vice president of the library board. He was president of the library board. And he gives back to the community a lot. For a while, he was running Mitch's. And now you're
a stay-at-home dad at the moment.
okay. Doing the cooking.
Yes.
All right. And he had some time, 3 years with geocaching now, and his family's involved. And he's excited about it. And they're going to put some caches here around the library. So it's kind of a fun thing, and you'll see as Scott shows you.
Thanks, Fred. Show of hands, how many people have heard of geocaching? A few, okay. How many people have actually been out geocaching? Just a couple, okay. All right. So this is a basic presentation I gave to the library board. It was intended as sort of a very much of an introduction. If there's specific questions, if those who, anyone who wants to jump in, and I'll try to answer them. But geocaching is a high-tech, primarily outdoor treasure hunting. And it's great to do with kids or grandkids. My daughter, who's 12, we got into it when she was probably 8 or 9, and she just loves it. I mean, there are days when it's like, what do you want to do? And we can't come to anything else, and she's like, let's go geocaching. And so we end up going out to some park, some Lake County Forest Preserve or something, and we'll go and find some of these outdoor treasures. What it uses is GPS, both to conceal the treasure in the sense of, now you know exactly where you've placed it, and then for the people who want to go find it, to go find the treasure. And these treasures are literally located all around the world. Little history. I know the last time, I think, was it your last presentation that someone came in and talked about GPS? Okay. So, one of the things that happened in May of 2000 was GPS, the selective nature of it, got turned off, so that your GPS on your phone or the GPS that you have in your car actually works reasonably. Prior to that, there was a huge error factor, and doing something that was GPS-based just wasn't feasible because you really didn't know when you got to your GPS location you were within like 50 or 100 feet as opposed to being within 3 or 4 feet. So May 2nd, the ability to use GPS accurately got turned back on by the government. On May 3rd, a gentleman placed the first geocache, and he was involved in computers. He put it in a big bucket near Beaver Creek, Oregon, and published on a list site that he maintained the geo-coordinates of where this bucket was placed. And within just a couple of days, multiple people had gone out there, found the bucket, and then posted comments on the list site about their experience. And this was really the beginning of geocaching. During the first month of this, people started mailing him, here's other locations, publish them for me. And so he published them on his list. Eventually this became an email list called the GPS Stash Hunt. By the end of May of that year, so we're not even a month into it, the GPS Stash Hunt mailing list actually coined the term geocaching. And that's really the history of this sport. Today, there are more than 2.5 million caches around the world and over 6 million registered users on the official site. And I will show you the official site a little bit later. It's free to join. There's free software you can use if you've got a smartphone. The official site does sell a piece of software for your smartphone, but there's a free one that works perfectly well with the database that they maintain, and you don't actually have to spend any money if you want to be a geocacher for free. All right. This is our general area. We are right about here. Okay, this is Central Park. You can see there's 3 caches hidden in Central Park. One of them is at the pool. The smiley faces are ones that I've actually been to. Once you actually find a cache and log that you found it, it turns the symbol for it a smiley face. So this is Gray's Lake. This is northeastern Illinois.
Scott?
Yeah.
These are based on their database?
This is all from the official site's database. Yeah, this is just map pictures that I copied. Okay. And I said this was around the world, so here's the U.S. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of them. It gets so small that you can't even see. You can tell where there's some holes, where there's just nothing in the particular area, but for the most part, the whole U.S. Here's Europe covered.
So the areas where there isn't anything, they're covered in the middle of a desert or mountain?
Yes, or jungles or very uninhabited areas. But you can see even South America and Africa, there's geocaches. There's Australia and parts of Asia. And literally this is on every continent. Here's Antarctica. And you can see there's even a small handful of caches on our Antarctica.
Do you have one on the North Pole?
I don't know. I haven't looked. We can look afterwards.
No, I just found out there's no North Pole.
Oh. So, yes, there are different kinds of caches, and I've picked 6 of them to talk a little bit about, and I'll go through them pretty quickly, but the traditional cache is sort of where it all started, and the traditional cache is some sort of a container that's hidden at a particular location, and at bare minimum the container has a paper log, and the paper log is for you to physically sign. Okay? At the end of your geocaching day or whatever, you can actually you can log it directly on your device if you're using like a smartphone, but you can also go back and go back to those geocache sites on the computer, log it on the computer that you've been there, so there's an electronic record of it as well, and it'll maintain on the official site, it'll maintain a list of all the different sites you've been to, as well as how many you've been to. It'll show you geographical dispersion, that sort of thing. So that's a traditional cache. There's these things called mystery or puzzle caches that on the website are shown with a big question mark. And what those are is either they're placed someplace kind of randomly or purposefully, but the physical cache isn't at that site. That is merely a point on the map so that there's a way to locate it in a computer environment. And what is in the data form for that particular cache is a clue, and it's either a clue to the actual location that you have to solve, a puzzle, if you will, or it's some sort of a question, a trivia question where it'll give you 3 answers, and each answer has a site located, a site coordinate with it. And if you get it right, it then is giving you essentially the correct answer to go to the real location. So it basically is a second step. It's not just a matter of physically going to the location, but it's a matter of doing some sort of mental calculation or mental puzzle. And I can show you some afterwards. We'll pull up the actual site and I can show you some. There's a bunch of them here. One of them starts, there's a gentleman in the area who goes by the nomenclature Mr. Bill, if I remember correctly. And he is very fond of doing these puzzle sites. And his are often extremely challenging to try to figure out before you can even go out and find the physical cache. But at the end of it, typically there's a physical cache at the end when you do go there. There's things called multi-caches, and there's actually one that starts here in the downtown area at the cemetery that's right on Lake Street. And basically what you do is it directs you to this first site. The coordinates direct you to the cemetery, and there's a set of clues that you have to solve at the cemetery. And once you're there and you solved it, it actually takes you to another cemetery. And once you solve the clues at that cemetery, it takes you to a third cemetery. And I think it's about 3 or 4 before you finally get to your end location. So multi-caches sort of bounce you from site to site to site using clues that are physically present. So for example, pulling dates off gravestones. Finding the right gravestone, pulling a date off of it, and then using it to assemble your geocoordinate. There's things called earth caches that are located at points on the earth that are geologically notable, things like the Grand Canyon, that sort of thing. And typically an earth cache page also includes a bunch of educational information about that site so that you're learning something about the nature or the history of that site in the process. Letterbox hybrids. Letterboxing was another form of geocaching. There's a lot of people now that are starting to do letterbox hybrids right in the geocache site. But basically what it is at that location, instead of there being a large container, there's a small container that contains a little stamp and an ink pad. And you use that to essentially, you bring your own stamp, that's your custom stamp, if you will. You stamp it and you register on the log in a letterbox with your stamp, but you can also take and essentially, if you're carrying kind of like think like a Visa, you know, like not the credit card Visa, but like a passport or a Visa kind of thing, you can then take the letterbox stamp and put one in your own, so that you kind of keep a collection of the letterboxes you've gone to. And then finally, there's event caches. And event caches are just that. It's an event. It's a gathering of local cachers who are getting together at a particular place and time. And they publish it on the site just like it were a regular cache. Oftentimes, the organizers will have hidden a cache in the area as well. But there's, and I'll show you the organization afterwards. There is a Greater Illinois, or Greater Geocaching Organization of Northern Illinois that maintains a site as well. And they have a very comprehensive list of published things. But it's interesting, I was looking on it the other day, and there was actually a birthday party. It was like a 12 or 14-year-old who was an avid geocacher and decided to have a geocache event as his birthday party. And so they invited people to, I think it was like one of the overhead out on, what do you call those? Out on the tollway, the overhead Oases, yeah. He had a birthday party in Oasis inviting geocachers to come out and celebrate with him. So that's an event cache. There's also a very specific type of event cache that I didn't put up there called cache in, or cache, C-A-C-H-E, in, trash out, CITO, C-I-T-O. Geocachers are very ecologically conscious, and there's a number of organizations throughout the country and throughout the world that organize these CITO events, and basically they go into an area that needs to be cleaned up. They clean up the event, they might place a couple of caches in the process, or they clean up the area, they place a couple of caches in the process, so they're actually improving the area ecologically in the process. Alright, so this is a basic primer on caches. This is typically what bigger containers would look like that you'd find at a traditional cache. And they range anywhere from things like ammo boxes all the way down to these little things, where these little things are basically the size that you put a magnetic key holder that you'd put a key into. And again, for a traditional cache, the only real requirement is that there be a paper log available to be signed. And so you can do that in something as small as a key holder. But if it says that it's a tiny size cache, you need to bring your own pen. And typically it'll even say that in the description. Alright, so hiding spots. Here's some hiding spots that are in nature. Some of them are obvious because the cache will have a big sticker on the front of it. Some of them get camouflaged pretty well so that it's a little harder to see, and you really have to be observant to find the cache if it's hiding in the middle of a log. Here's some urban hiding spots. This is these are two favorite locations. As a matter of fact, there's at least two in Grays Lake that are hidden like this. This is a light post in the middle of a parking lot. Okay? The square cover at the bottom of the post that kind of covers the bolts, those for the most part lift up pretty easily, and you can place something small. In this case, it looks like it's about the size of a pill bottle under there. The other place that's real common is fence post caps often come off, and you can put something, if you anchor it to the inside of the fence post cap, then when you pull off the fence post cap, the small bundle inside it will come out. Some are camouflaged. So you can see some different ones where they've actually built it into camouflage, or gone so far, this is just an egg in a fake nest, a fake doghouse to hide it. Okay. Others will be hidden in plain sight. Strapped to a fence, or the one on the right is actually in an art, kind of an art alcove in a museum area, and they've just created a piece of artwork out of what is essentially an ammo box, an old ammo box. Some are pretty devious. This picture here is the top of what looks like just a sandstone rock, but it actually has a small geocache embedded in it. And there's a geocache actually in here. If you lift the entire thing up and turn the valve to open it, it can hide a small cache inside the valve. Some are almost impossible to find. This is actually a geocache that is at Moraine Hills Park. Anyone want to guess where the geocache is? Anyone spot it? Where? This down here? Oh, this over here? Up there?
No, you have
Where?
Oh,
This stuff?
the bolt.
It's the bolt? Yes, it's the bolt. That's exactly where it is. Who said it? Who said bolt? Yeah.
I did.
So when you tug on the bolt, what you find is that there's a little tiny container that is inserted into it, and literally, I now pulled it out, you can see the size of it. It was only about that big. So it contained just a paper log. Okay. Some are really pretty downright funny. This one, again, what is appearing to be the cheese on this is actually another camouflaged ammo can. Okay. Larger caches have a special payoff. So when they're the size of an ammo can or anything you can put stuff into, they oftentimes will have stuff in them. And this is where, especially for kids, they really love it because it'll have little things they can trade. And the idea is, when I go out with my daughter, she brings a little bag of stuff that she wants to potentially trade. And then she'll go through when we go to one of these larger ones, and if she finds something she wants, she takes that out, but she puts something from her bag in. So it's one in, one out. The other thing that you'll oftentimes find in these larger ones are things called travel bugs or trackables. And I'll talk about those afterwards, but basically you can go on the site, you can buy these things, they're travel bugs, they're geocoins, they have a whole bunch of different names, but they have a registration number on each one. And these are something you have to purchase. They physically send them to you. And what happens is, once you've registered that number, in the system is able to track it. And so when someone finds one, these are ones that you don't keep. So what you do is you take it out of one container and you log, hey, I've just found this and I've taken it with me. And then when you place it in another container, you log it in that, hey, I've just placed this in this new place. And so it literally starts to build a map associated with that particular tracking number, and I'll show you some of those maps. It puts a map with that tracking number, and you can actually look, and as the owner of it, or even once you found one of these, you can actually look and see where this thing has been. And the first one we found down in Kentucky at the Corvette Museum, and it had been placed there by a young man who was about 14 years old from Germany. And he didn't place it there, he placed it in his hometown in Germany. And it kind of made its way across Europe several times, and then came over across the ocean, and ended up in Kentucky. Not quite sure how, but it ended up in Kentucky, and it has continued its travels, and it's kind of fun to watch it. But he had asked, if you place it somewhere, just send me a picture of the location so I can learn about, these places around the world that my travel bug's going. So there's all sorts of kind of fun stuff that you can find in these bigger ones, and that's why we call it a treasure hunt. The other thing some people do is they will actually place a series, and if you can notice, most of these are the mystery caches where it's not necessarily at that specific location. But what someone has done in each of these cases, these are real locations on the site, they've placed a series of either real caches or mystery caches that, by placing them in a particular way, form the shape of other things. Okay? So this cardinal is on the east side of St. Louis. The dove is actually on the west side of St. Louis. This is in the Colorado area. This one is actually the symbol of the Colorado Geocaching Society. And each one of those is essentially, if you clicked on the individual icon for it, would bring you to the information to find that particular one. So, for example, this one down here, which is, I think this one's actually in Illinois, or it might be in Indiana. But this one's a Star Trek theme. Every single one of them is a Star Trek trivia question. If you get it right, it gives you the locations for the actual cache that's affiliated with that particular question. So this is just GeoArt, and it's just kind of another fun thing that goes along with it. This is all literally screenshots directly from the official site. These are all actual caches. The official site is geocaching.com. Okay, and as I say, you can join the site for free. If you want to become a premium member, it's about $35 a year. There's no real need to. There are some geocaches that are only available to premium members. I won't give you the details unless you're a premium member. But there's plenty of geocaches out there that aren't. And certainly when my family joined, we started out not being premium members. If you're interested in getting together with some of the people who do this, I don't want to say professionally, but who have found thousands and thousands of caches, There is a geocaching organization in Northern Illinois called GONAL, and their website has get-togethers, and at any given time, there's usually at least half a dozen or more posted over the next several months to find there. And you'll also find a list. It ranks roughly the top 2,500 members of GONAL by how many geocaches they found. I wouldn't even come close to making that list. They've typically found over several thousand caches apiece.
Over what period of time?
Well, if you think about it, since 2000, right? I mean, because that's when it started. And the guy who's at the top of the list, I want to say he's found over 200,000 caches. Yeah.
Does he do anything else?
I don't know. I've never met the gentleman. So let me switch over, and I'll just drive through the website a little bit. This is the official website at geocaching.com. If you want more information to go out and physically start doing this, there is, under the Learn tab, a great Geocaching 101. It can tell you the nuts and bolts of geocaching. What to look for, what kinds of things, on your first trip out, how to identify which cache is going to be a good cache for you to go after the first time. The very first time my wife and daughter and I went out geocaching, we had what turned into a very frustrating experience because I hadn't done enough kind of research on how to. And so we went out there looking for geocaches, and the first 3 or 4 we tried to find, we couldn't. I mean, we found nothing. We did the multi-cache with the cemeteries. We ended up at the final cemetery. We couldn't find the cache. We did. There was one that was hidden at the memorial, the Clock Tower Memorial here in Grays Lake. That was an exceedingly difficult one to find. We ended up finding it on our second or third trip, but it was a magnetic key holder that was black, that was attached to the black fencing. And it was attached in such a way that you could only see it from certain angles, from the back of the memorial. It's at this point no longer there. That one's gone. But it was a very frustrating trip. And we did finally find one, because otherwise I'm not sure my daughter would have ever wanted to go do it again. But there's great information under Geocaching 101 in the Learn tab. I was talking before about collectibles, or trackables rather. And
Scott, there was one screen where you talked about archiving.
second.
There was one screen that mentioned the word archiving.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Is that a special function?
No, well, it's not a special function. When a cache is no longer present, what happens is people will start going to look for it if it's still being listed as an active cache, and people will find that it's not there anymore. It's gone. Something's happened to it. Either someone came along who didn't know what geocaching was about and swept up the whole thing and removed it, or maybe it got destroyed by water or whatever. I mean, those things happen. What will happen is people will start logging it that they couldn't find it, that it just wasn't there, and especially the people who found thousands of them. If someone who's found several thousand says it's not there, chances are it physically isn't there. And so the administrators at the site will reach out to the owner of the cache electronically and say, hey, go check your cache. And you have 30 days to do it, and if you don't respond back, we'll just automatically archive it. What that means is that it's no longer physically showing up on the maps, but if you've been to that cache and you found it, the data behind it is all still there. So that it'll still show up on your list, it'll still show up that it's one of the ones you found, you can still look at it, you can still find it and look at what, how you responded to it, whatever. But the physical cache may be gone. I was trying to find, let's see. So this is actually, this is the one I was telling you about that started out in Germany. This is one of the trackables. And this one, I take back, it started out in Spain, with a kid in Spain. And so this is sort of the path of this particular, and it's just a tag, right? It's just a tag with a number on it that people go and they log every time they find it. So this is what it looks like when you look at the map of a trackable. And it's just kind of interesting to see how this little coin has made its way across the world. And sometimes they get pretty messy in terms of what they look like. That one, this one has this one's been 6,000 miles back and forth across the U.S. A couple of times. So, when you look at these trackables, that's really what you're looking at. And it's kind of fun to pick up one of these trackables and move it someplace else and drop it off. And as I say, the site maintains a list of the trackables you essentially have touched, so that you can go and click on them if you want to go back and look and see what's happened and where these trackables are now. It's kind of fun to watch where they've gone after you drop them. But the main function on the site, and you can use it with, just pull up the map. The main function, if you're going to try to play along and do some geocaching, is obviously the live maps of the area. And as I say, there's apps for your phone. There's also, if you have just a handheld GPS unit that you used for hunting or fishing or hiking or whatever, the site actually is got software that'll interact, and you can actually download information if your GPS unit is capable of that, where it'll download the information for you. But this is our area, and you can just sort of expand in and out. If you're traveling and you want to see what's down in a particular area, you can just kind of move the map, and it'll tell you. Here we are down in the Evanston area. Here's another one of these patterns. I'm not sure what WGK or W6K stands for, but it's another one of those patterns, those arc patterns that I was talking about. But it's amazing to see just the sheer number of these caches that are available. When you see these straight lines like this, what you're usually looking at is bike path or hiking trail that's going along an old railroad path. And you'll see, people have dropped these geocaches at, intervals along the path. So you do see some of that kind of thing as well. Questions? I kind of went through this pretty quick. Oh, there's the Gonal site as well, which is northeastern Illinois geocaches. And that really ranges from the Rockford area all the way down, all the way to the lake, and then from Wisconsin, southern Wisconsin, all the way down to south of, Joliet, you'll see things. So it's a pretty big area. But yes?
Each person would put one of these geocaching units around the country?
There are people who have done multiple, and there are people that don't do any, right? So the fun of it is going out and finding them. Depending on the kind of personality you are, you might also enjoy placing them. But certainly placing them is not a requirement, and there's plenty of people that just go out and search for them. The people who get really, really into it do tend, people who've done thousands of them are also the people who tend to go out, and they'll have the stuff with them so that if they're out and they're in an area where there's maybe only one geocache and they happen to see a spot that, that would be great for a second, well, now I've got the materials in my trunk, and I'll just go out and I'll build one on the fly and register it. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you show us one of the ones that you've done so that we can see kind of,
Yep.
if you want to say, show somebody else where all your
So let me see. Let me go back. Let me find Grace Lake again. So for example, this is Moraine Hills Park, and there's a series of, I want to say there's 32 of them around the park. You can see one day we went and we found 16 of them. All these little smiley faces represent ones that we've done. When you click on one of them, think about which one. This one, for example. I'll go to this, because I showed you the pictures of it. So when you click on it, it gives you a brief description, and when you click on it further, it'll actually take you into the information about the cache. So this is Moraine Hills State Park number 15, crossing over. This is the one. Remember the little bolts that I showed you photographs of? This is this is the bolt. Okay. So it's giving you the coordinates, and if it's on your phone, if it's on your phone, it's interfacing with the GPS in your phone. So for those of you who've got smartphones, it's a really easy application. The one I recommend that's free is called C::Geo. Okay. And it completely, even though it's not the official one for the geocaching website, it completely interfaces with it and gives you pretty much all the flexibility and everything you could do with their $9 one for free. Okay. And unfortunately, we never figured out a way to put pictures from that up on the screen. I would have liked that, but we hadn't figured that out. So when you go into one of these logs, what you're going to see is let me scroll down, drag this a little bit. What you get is a description of the geocache. Okay. And it's pretty funny because you're looking for a large, bright red bison tube with a log only. Well, one, I don't personally consider this to be large, right? And number two, it's a bright red bison tube that's completely hidden in a piece of wood that you can't see at all. So, they're being a little humorous with their description here. But the important things that you can see on here, right up here at the top, where it'll tell you difficulty, terrain, and size. Okay? So that'll give you a sense. Personally, I would say this was more of a difficulty of a 4 or 5. I think they're underrating themselves when they say 2.5. Terrain was pretty easy. It was just sort of a walk down a path. There were some stairs, but it wasn't overly hard to get to. And size, the size thing, it starts at micro. And micro ones are typically, no bigger than like a small pill bottle. And some of them, I've actually seen a micro one that was about the size of like a medicine capsule. There's another one at Moraine Hills that's hidden in a doorbell. So they took the doorbell, they stripped the guts of it out, but left the button as a fake cover on the front of it. They put this little tiny, it's literally, it's probably smaller than the first joint of my pinky kind of thing that snaps into the back of it, that has a log rolled up in it when you kind of separate the two sides of the tube. And then it has magnets that hold it onto the side of the structure. And it's at a house or physical structure location at Moraine Hills Park. So, micro can be really, really small. Now, the clues on that one were sufficient that you could figure out that, because trying to find something that's that small in nature is going to be very, really difficult. But that's where some of this gives you guidance to how big is it, what am I looking for. It'll even typically, there'll be this additional hint that's scrambled, but if you hit decrypt, and you can do that on your app as well, if you hit decrypt, it'll actually tell you, some sort of an additional clue. And the clue here was something is missing its mate. Every day has its night, every valley a hilltop, every beach has a shore. Well, what was missing its mate is you had a bolt on one side without a knot on the other. Right? So if you looked really closely, that thing was that whole fence structure, that whole bridge structure was nailed together. And you just had this bolt sticking into one side of it, which was, what you were supposed to start to when you saw this. This was the clue that was supposed to go, oh, okay, something's missing its mate, what's missing? And, my wife, after about 40 minutes, she finally spotted what it was that was missing. And that was the fact that the bolt didn't have anything holding it on either side. So it also gives you, it'll tell you, sometimes they'll tell you, here's an additional waypoint, the closest parking, if you just want to kind of park somewhere, walk to it, and then walk back to your car. At Moraine Hills, with so many of them, one side of the park, there's a whole bunch of parking lots. The other side of the park, you really have to do is one big sweep, because there's no parking close to it. But it'll give you everything, and it'll also let you look at the log. So it'll show you, who's found it. One of the things that I highly recommend if you're going to go out and do this is the ones you look for ones that have been found in the last week or two. Because then you know they're really there, right? At least a week ago they were still there. So you can kind of tell from the dates on it, okay, this is being found on a regular basis, it's still there, it's still physically present. And that way you're not going after something that has kind of gone by the wayside. Because that happens. people, if they're not going out there and checking on their caches, and especially people who've placed 50 or 100 or 200 caches, they can't always go out there to check. But if someone reports it, hey, it needs maintenance, or hey, it's missing, they'll then go back out to look for it. But you don't want to be the one as a brand new cacher trying to find this thing that hasn't been found in 6 years that has really disappeared off the face of the earth. Okay. And it does give you some summaries, but this is kind of what the details on these look like. Pull back one. If you want to go this afternoon and just do an easy one, you just have to be careful. One of the things they talk about. How many have read any of the Harry Potter books to know the term muggles? Right? A muggle is a non-magical person. In geocaching, a muggle is someone who's not aware of geocaches. Okay? So when we talk about muggles and geocaching, it's you want to make sure that you don't go over and unhide something in plain view of someone who may or may not know what's going on. Right? Because that's just an invitation for them to then go over, figure out what it is, and just take it with them and take it, and have it removed accidentally. But there's a couple of easy ones if you want to go to. It's still loading at the moment, I think. Let's see.
Looks like there's one at Robin's house.
Where?
Right at the
Never
corner of
find
the
it.
lake.
Said there's one at our house. How would you know?
This little dot there,
Where?
next to the Graves Lake.
This?
Well, you're
Must be in
getting-
the parking lot.
Of what? Which one are you pointing to?
You see Graves Lake, the lake?
Oh,
Right
this
at the
here?
tip. Right at the tip. That's where Robin lives, Robin and Lou.
This one,
It's
the
in your
last-
backyard, Robin.
It actually is. There's a little piece of woods that there's like a path that goes up. If you're at the parking lot of the lake, there's a path that kind of goes up the hill to a street above it,
Right.
and you're passing through this like little section of woods, and there is one hidden in the woods. I know we tried to find it one time, but it was so buggy that when we were out there, it was like springtime or fall or something before the bugs were gone. For whatever reason, right now I'm having trouble getting it to. It's kind of locked up. Let me see if I can.
What?
I was trying to get it to.
It's not updated on the screen.
Yeah, it's not updated.
I don't know. We want to know how you find it.
You follow your GPS?
Yeah, you basically follow the GPS. There are a couple of easy ones. What I was looking to see was which ones were still present, but I showed you the thing with the light poles. Okay. There is one at the Walgreens at 83 and Lake Street. Okay. Or 83 and Washington. And I want to say it's the light pole that is closest to the red box. Okay. It's kind of across the parking lot from where the red box is. If you lift it, there is one of the small ones in there. There's also a small one kind of in the parking lot of that little shopping center across from CLC with like the Jimmy John's and Wine Nose. Yeah. There's another one. I don't remember which light post it is, but one of the light posts in that part also has one of those where you can slip it up. I want to say that one was a little trickier because the person actually used a magnetic key thing and stuck it up on the underside of the light post box. So it wasn't that you picked it up and saw it. You physically had to kind of put your hand up into what can sometimes be a spidery. Yeah, I see some grimaces. But there is a certain amount of that where they'll stick it somewhere so that it's not quite as obvious if you do find it. And the website right now, for whatever reason, we're kind of just try again. See if it comes up. But those are two that I know of that are fairly easy finds if you know the light pole trick. Okay. Other questions?
You discussed at the board meeting that you're planning to place some in the area.
Yeah. So the the reason I presented this to the board was because I want to put a couple on the grounds of the library, and my thought process is we'll put probably a traditional cache somewhere at the back of the property, and I don't know exactly how we'll hide it yet. I need to do a site kind of walk with some of the folks here at the library to do this. The board approved this. I'm going to take care of, it's not very expensive to put one of these things up. There's no charge to register it. It's just a matter of physically creating, whatever you're going to do with it. But I'm thinking of something that's going to be a little bit trickier so that it's not quite as obvious as just a box sitting there. But then the other thing we'll do is probably some sort of a mystery cache that involves finding some books out on the shelf and using their call numbers, or you can use the card catalog, obviously the computer card catalog. Find the Dewey numbers and use that as a way to reference where it's physically located. There are other libraries that have caches placed in them. Crystal Lakes Library has one physically placed in it. I suspect it's in a reference book. By the clue leads you to a particular call number that's a reference call number. I haven't been out to that one, but we were actually coming back from Florida last year, and we stopped to do some geocaching each day that we were traveling. And what gave me the idea was that we went to this little town, and there was one place in the back of the parking lot of the library. I was like, oh, we should have some at the Grays Lake Library, especially since I'm a board member. Yeah, that's one of those. So, other questions? It really is a tremendous amount of fun. Yeah.
If you find one of these and there's something in it that you can keep, then you replace it with something that you want to put in there for
Right.
the next person, right?
Right.
Okay. You usually don't use any money.
No, you typically don't. Every once in a while you'll find when caches are first hidden, the owner of the cache will oftentimes put a reward in for what's called the first to find. Okay, so it might be a $5 gift card, right? So first to find gets sort of a special prize because there's something of greater value in there that was hidden initially. It's certainly not a requirement, but you oftentimes have. They'll say, there's a special prize in there for the first to find, and it could be a gift card, it could be a trackable, because trackables are there's a physical cost associated with buying a trackable. But yeah, it's usually a one in, one out, and I would say the majority of the stuff in there tends to be more kid-oriented. And a lot of it's things like Burger King toys and, little Matchbox cars and that kind of thing. It's kind of fun stuff for kids. It's really, what tends to be in them is kid stuff. You don't tend to find...
There's no iPads or iPhones.
You're not, and it's just little schlocky things that, it's fun for kids, right? Who as a kid didn't at some point pretend to search for buried treasure, right? Well, this is a search for buried treasure where you have the pirate's map that leads you there, right? And when you get there, you can actually get some of the treasure. And so for kids the first time I took my niece out to do this, one of the benefits of being a premium member and spending the $30 a year or whatever it is for the premium membership is that you can there's some ways you can save searches that have better filtering capabilities. So my niece lives in Springfield, Ohio, and I did a custom search that I saved and was able to upload to my phone that basically showed me only the large geocaches that were relatively easy and had been found within the last 30 days. Okay? And so that way, when we went out, unlike the experience that I'd had with my daughter, which was, nearly disastrous, we went out specifically looking for larger geocaches that were going to be easier to find, that we knew still existed. And so in one afternoon, we found 4 or 5 of these, and she has just raved about this ever since. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread, right? And for 10 and 12-year-olds, it really is that kind of excitement. Yeah.
But it's not just done by
No, absolutely not. And
Because
there's
I
plenty
know
of adults
that
that do it.
my internist was telling me how his son was doing it,
Yep.
and his son is
Yeah.
not as old as I am, because he isn't, but
I mean-
therefore, he's in his
Yeah.
60s,
Yeah.
so his son's got to be in his 40s that is really into this.
Yeah, I mean, we have a great time doing it as a family. And part of it is that it's something wholesome that you can do as a family. You're getting exercise, you're going out and doing something together. It's that shared experience, and it really is a lot of fun to do. You know, I've taken my in-laws out to geocache with us, and they've had fun doing it. We've taken my dad out. He was actually very good at it, but his reaction to it was, why? Why do you want to do this? I don't get it. And why would anyone want to hide these things? Who the heck is hiding these things? You know, it's just a different. But the funny part was, we ended up in the area he was in. There were a whole bunch of very small ones, and so we're going around trying to find these smaller ones. And of course, we've done it so that But he's the one who found virtually every single one. He's like, oh, is that it? Oh, is that it? So, I mean, he enjoyed it, but I don't think that it was necessarily something he would go seek to do. But spending the day doing it with us was something he enjoyed. So,
I have another question.
Yeah.
What's to keep young kids
right.
from telling their friends
Uh-huh.
so that they can all go out and find these and then rack up a track record?
Nothing. Matter of fact, there are groups of people that go out together, and you oftentimes see in the logs, a group of 8 or 10 people going out together, and they've gone out together to find it, and sometimes they're with kids, sometimes they're not.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, I mean, often it's not uncommon for groups to go out together and find it and build up a track record doing that, because obviously if you give it 8 or 10 sets of eyes,
Yeah.
it's going to be easier to spot some of these. And I will tell you, the person who did the Moraine Hill set, I mean, some of them are devilishly difficult. We were lucky that at the very end of our day there, we had, out of the 16, we had found 13 of them. The 16 that we went after. And we happened at our very last stop, we ended up running into another group of geocachers. It was a gentleman and his girlfriend who were out geocaching for the day. And we kind of realized that we were both geocachers and that it was safe to talk. And we were talking about all the geocaches in the park, because really the ones at Moraine Hill are very creative. And I said we were having trouble, and they said, well, which ones? Because we just finished. This was our last one. This was the last one in the entire set for us. So we were talking about it, and they gave us some additional clues that helped us find the 3 that we were missed. So we went back to those 3 sites that we had missed along the way, and were able to actually solve them as a result of help from some other people who had actually found it. So it is a definite cooperative effort sometimes, where we had found the one we found the one at the bridge that was behind the bolt, but there was another one that was behind an outhouse kind of thing, a bathroom, rest facility, and it was set into the ground and looked like a pop-up sprinkler head. Which, if you thought about it, didn't make a lot of sense. And we had looked at that and thought that, and we tried to lift it, but we hadn't been able to lift it out. And it was only after the person said, no, that was it, just pull a little harder, that we went back to it and were able to pull it out and open it up and find the cache that was hidden in it. Because whoever did those really did a very nice job of those. Those are beautifully designed caches at that park. Yes.
When you said you did it with your niece, is there a way of looking at this map and saying, I want to go to this location, or do you just have to be able to sort of find it?
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question, because the map is basically where they're located.
Right, but there's no way to search, are there some in this location?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sitting there moving the map around.
Yeah,
and
no,
I
you
found something
can.
that's supposed to be around my house, but if I wanted
Right.
to find out, say, where my grandchildren live in New Jersey,
Yeah.
doing it the way I just did, it would be really difficult.
Difficult. So what you do is you go to View Geocache Map, or actually,
Right.
let's see. take it back. You go to hide or seek, which is one of the first ones on that list. Let me just go back to it. Hide and seek cache. And you can find a geocache, for example, where are they?
Mount Laurel, New Jersey,
Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Do you have a zip code or
08054.
08054? So if you do this, you can pull up a list of caches within 100 miles of there. And then what you can do is, once you've done that, you can say map it, and it will show you the ones that are around Mount Laurel, New Jersey.
Got it.
So there are definitely faster ways. And if you do it on your phone, you can either do it live by where you physically are GPS-wise, or you can do a search. And the other thing, as I said, if you do join as a premium member, there are some ways where you can filter that search even further to say, only show me the large, only show me the ones that are large or extra large, so that you're really only going for like the big tackle box size kinds of things. And especially the very first trip out with kids, you want to make sure you find ones that are, you want to identify ones that are going to be easy to find, so that they have that joy of finding it and become, really, really attracted to this sport, if you want to call it that. Other than that, it's probably the only real benefit I found of being a member. Is the ability to do those custom searches, and the fact that there are a few caches that are limited to premium members. Okay. Other questions?
Scott, I think we're going to take a break now.
Okay.
If you have more questions, certainly Scott's available. And we appreciate it very much.
No problem.
Thanks. And my wife Liz is here, so she can take over.